And had this one fellow who had a construction company in Las Vegas, and the business had gone down quite a bit. It wasn't depression, but it was kind of a recession, and the construction business just wasn't booming like it had. And he went to Austin and saw that he thought he could make some pretty good, get some pretty good jobs in Austin. So we had a whole bunch of equipment that he needed taken to Austin, and we made 4 or 5 loads each of his equipment, like loaders and screens and sifters and all kinds of stuff. And this one time, he just had everybody else was busy, and he says, "Well, I needed to get this dump truck," and it was a side dump. And I had a step deck, and he said, "Can you get that on your step deck?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." He says, "Okay, I'm going to dig a ramp." And what he really meant was he could dig a ditch for me to back my truck down, so it would be level, and he could back the trailer up on my trailer, and then I just pull out of the hole. And so he did that. And he had a tractor that I thought was his. It turned out he borrowed the tractor to load the trailer. And so it was really hard because I didn't get a straight shot at it. I had to back in and turn. I think I took 10 tries before I finally got it in there, got it far enough on the trailer so that we could drop the landing gear. So we dropped the landing gear, tagged it off. I pulled out, put some other stuff on there, and went down and waited and could put some more stuff. So we put some more stuff on, chained all that down until it was close to the legal weight. It was a little under legal. So he said, "Okay, I'll see you in Austin in a couple of days." I said, "Okay." And we really liked this guy because once you deliver the stuff, he writes you a check right then, gives it to you. And it's a lot of freight you haul, they don't pay you for 30 days. And so you have to front all the costs yourself. And this guy, if you were a little short of money, you do a run for him and boom. But anyway, I got there and it was raining, and the lot he had was a sticky clay lot that was all wet and yucky, And I pulled in there, and I used to take 2 days to get to Austin. I'd go to El Paso, sleep, and then get to Austin in the afternoon. And so I went to Austin, got there at the afternoon. It was raining like crazy, and I called him and said, "Hey, I'm coming in." He met me there, and I pulled into his place, and it was just real gummy. And I said, "Okay," and I put my ramps up. He said, "Can you get it off?" And because I don't have the loader to dig the hole. I said, "Oh no, I got ramps. I have 16-footer ramps, two 8-foot sections of ramp." And I said, "We can just back up and hook it right onto the fifth wheel and pull it off." And he said, "I don't have a tractor." He says, "Well, I'll get to my other backhoe tractor and it'll lift it and we can roll it off." I said, "Oh no, you can't, because it has automatic spring brakes. You have to put air to them." And he says, "Oh, I thought it was like a regular trailer." Didn't have that much experience with big truck stuff. And I said, "Well, don't you have another tractor?" He says, "Oh no, I don't have a tractor here. I can't borrow one or anything." He says, "Oh, what are we gonna do?" I said, "I have an idea. How about if I disconnect my tractor from the trailer? As long as we have big boards to put under the landing gear of the trailer." I was worried about the landing gear sinking into the mud. So I said, he had some big thick boards we put under there, and lowered the landing gear, unhooked my tractor, drove it around, and I had the ramp set up. So I backed up the ramps, one backup, backed up the ramps, click, onto the trailer, set my brakes, got out, hooked up all the air to the trailer, raised up the stiff legs, the landing gear, and drove it off. I said, "Where do you want it?" So we put it right where. And he was looking at me, kind of shaking his head, and we unloaded the rest of the stuff. And he says, "You're first who I call from now on." He was just so happy. I was happy too that we figured it out. Then I drove around, backed up under my trailer again, swept the landing gear. But he said, "You're my first call from now on." I said, that was, I've never seen anything like that. And I said, "I hadn't either. Just, it just came to me." It was kind of a fun thing, although it was miserable in the rain. But I do have some pictures of that too.
Explain what landing gear is.
Landing gear is, the trailer has 2 axles or 3 axles in the back, and in the front, where there's a big plate, and you slide it under the front of the trailer, and there's a pin that clicks in the plate. If you just pulled out and you didn't have landing gear, the trailer would go all the way to the ground. And so landing gear are like front legs instead of axles, and it has a crank on it and it's gears, and it extends, it telescopes in and out, so the telescopes down to the ground level. Then you can pull out, and the trailer just drops down about an inch or something. You can go under that far. So that's what landing gear is. And I've hauled loads and stuff, mostly scrap iron, where they do what they call a live load for scrap iron, but sometimes they do a dead load, and they drop a trailer and they fill it full of scrap, and the landing gear have feet on them about that big, and so if you're on hard gravel or pavement or something, it's okay. But if you're on dirt and it's maybe a little muddy or a little soft, you put on a truck, you put 34,000 on where the tractor tires are, the drivers, and 34,000 the back tires, and so you have 34,000 pounds on the landing gear. And they tend to push down because doesn't have as big a footprint as 2 axles of truck with 8 tires. So you always watch out for the landing gear and stuff like that, because I've had it where one side goes down and the whole trailer tips over and dumps stuff off, and that's where tow companies make money, and that's where I learned to always take care of my landing gear, because I made too much money on tow trucks, people that didn't.